Good morning. In this video, we will be discussing the question and answers of chapter number 3 of Civics. Why do we need a parliament? So the first question would be from the first page itself. The first question is, why is India, why did independent India become an representative democracy? Why did independent India become a representative democracy? Why did independent India become a representative democracy? This would be your first question, and the answer would start from the first line itself. India became independent on 15th August 1947. We will not write as we know, you should cut that portion. India became independent on 15th August 1947. And then this point would be continued from here. People from various backgrounds joined the struggle and they were inspired by the ideas of freedom, equality, participation, and decision making. This entire will be your first point. The first point would read, India became independent on 15th August 1947. People from various backgrounds joined the struggle and they were inspired by the ideas of freedom, equality, participation in decision making. This would be your first point. Second point would be from lower down. As far back as 1885, the Indian National Congress demanded that there be elected members in the legislation with a right to discuss the budget and ask questions. This would be your point number 2. Point number 2 would read, as far back as 1885, the Indian National Congress demanded that the elected members in the legislature with a right to discuss the budget and ask questions. So these will be the first 2 points. For the third point, we'll have to go down, and the third point would start from here. The experience of colonial rule as well as the participation of different people in the struggle for freedom left little doubt in the mind of the nationalists that all persons in independent India would be able to participate in making decisions. This would be your third point. From the experience to making decision. That will be your third point. And the fourth point would come from the bottom line. The dreams and aspirations of the freedom struggle were made concrete in the Constitution of Independent India that laid down the principle of universal adult franchise, that is, all adult citizens of the country have the right to vote. This would be point number 4. And this would be wrapping up your question number 1. So the question number 1 will be having only 4 points. Now for the second question, we'll go to the second page. And the second question would be, how do people form the government in a representative democracy? How do people form a government in the representative democracy? How do people form the government in a representative democracy? So the point 1 would be taken from the first line of the second page. The takeoff point of a democracy is the idea of consent, that is, the desire, approval, and the participation of the people. This would be your point number one. For point number two, we'll go down. The basic idea in this kind of democracy is that the individual or the citizen is the most important person, and that in principle the government as well as other public institutions need to have trust of these citizens. Point number two. Then for the point number three, we'll go to the next paragraph. The individual gives, we'll write gives. The individual gives approval to the government through elections up till here. So we will not write this portion, we will not write this portion, we will not write this portion. We'll only write the individual gives approval to the government through elections. Through elections. That will be your point number three. So the third point would read the individual gives approval to the government through elections. And the fourth point would come from the last lines. People would elect their representatives to the parliament. Then one group from among these elected representatives form the government. This would be your point number fourth. And the point number five would continue from the next line. The parliament, which is made up of all representatives together, control and guide the government. In this sense, people through their chosen representatives form the government and also control it. Point number five. These would be your 5 points for the question number two. How do people form the government in a representative democracy? For the next question, we'd go to the page number 34, the role of parliament. And the question would be, how does the parliament select a national government? How does the parliament select a national government? So the point number one would start from here. The Lok Sabha is usually elected once every 5 years. This would be point number one. Point number two would be the country is divided into numerous constituencies, and that would be point number two. Within this point number two, you can also write each of these constituencies elects one person to the parliament. So the first point would be the Lok Sabha is usually elected once every 5 years. And second point would be the country is divided into numerous constituencies. Each of these constituencies elects one person to the parliament. Then for the next point, we will go to page number 36. For a political party to form the government, they must have a majority of elected MPs. Since there are 543 elected members in the Lok Sabha, to have a majority, a party should have at least half the number, that is 272 members or more. This would be your point number 3. So the third point would read, for a political party to form the government, they must have a majority of elected MPs. Since there are 543 elected members in the Lok Sabha, to have a majority, a party should have at least half the number, that is 272 members or more. Then we'll go down to the third paragraph. The Prime Minister of India is the leader of the ruling party in the Lok Sabha. This would be your point number 4. Then the point number 5 would begin from the next line. From the MPs who belong to her party, the Prime Minister selects ministers to work with her to implement decisions. This is point number 5. These ministers then take charge of different areas of government functioning like health, education, finance, etc. etc. This will be your 6th point. And this would conclude your question. How does the parliament choose the national government? Now a very small question from this page itself is, what is opposition? What is opposition? For that, you can mark from here the opposition in parliament. The opposition in parliament is formed by all the political parties that oppose the majority party / coalition formed. The largest among these parties is also called the opposition party. This would be the complete answer for the next question. What is opposition? In a parliament, whoever is not forming the majority or is not part of the majority coalition will form the opposition, and the largest party among these opposition parties is called the leader of the opposition or the opposition party. Then we'd move to the next page, and the next page the question would be, how does the parliament how does the parliament control, guide and inform the government? How does the parliament control, guide and inform the government? How does the parliament control, guide and inform the government? This would have 2, 3, 4 big points. First point would start from the beginning. The parliament, while in session, begins with the question hour. The question hour is an important mechanism through which MPs can elicit information about the working of the government. This is a very important way through which the parliament controls the executive. This would be your first point. Then for the second point, we'll go down. The opposition parties play a critical role in the healthy functioning of a democracy. They highlight drawbacks in the various policies and programs of the government and mobilize popular support for their own policies. That would be point number 2. So these would be the first 2 points. For the question, how does the parliament control, guide, and inform the government? Then for the next point, we'll go to the next page, page number 38. In addition, in all matters dealing with finance, the parliament's approval is crucial for the government. This is one of the several ways in which the parliament controls, guides, and informs the government. This would be point number 3. And then the last line would constitute point number 4. The MPs, as representatives of the people, have a central role in controlling, guiding, and informing Parliament, and this is a key aspect of the functioning of Indian democracy. Fourth point. So these would be the 4 points for the question: how does the Parliament control, guide, and inform the government? Then for the last question of this chapter, we'll go to page number 39. The question would be, why are some constituencies reserved for SCs and STs? Why are some constituencies reserved for SCs and STs? Why are some constituencies reserved for SCs and STs? So for this, we'll go to the last paragraph of page number 39. It has been observed that representative democracy cannot produce a perfect reflection of society. Point number 1. There is a realization that when interest and experience separate us, it is important to ensure that communities that have been historically marginalized are given adequate representation. Point number 2. With this in mind, some seats are reserved in Parliament for SCs and STs. Point number 3. And then the last line would constitute point number 4. This has been done so that the MPs elected from these constituencies will be familiar with and can represent Dalit and Adivasi interests in the parliament. Point number 4. So these questions along with the glossary will be part of your notebook work from this chapter. Do complete it in your respective notebooks. Thank you.